All right, we're going to go ahead and start here. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. We are doing a micro webinar, part of our X Factor series today. Today, we're talking about how Mosaic NetworX Simplifies MDR with managed SIEM SOC. And I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Seema Chiodo. I'm the National Channel Director for Mosaic NetworX. Also on this micro webinar, we've got Matt Heil, COO and one of the founders of Mosaic NetworX. Comes with a long-standing history in infrastructure and networking technologies. We also have Justin Wilson. He's the head of our technology and engineering group, also a tenure in the industry with over 25 years in IT management, security, and consulting. With that, I'm going to hand this over to Matt.
Thank you, Seema. It's Matt Hiles here, and I like to say this every week. If you haven't spoken with Seema, you should. You're missing out. She's a nationally ranked channel manager, and you can check the stats on that if you'd like. But she's known for taking a dead lead and turning it into a revenue generating opportunity. So I encourage you to reach out to Seema for all your projects. Today, we're going to talk about managed detection and response. This is a very poignant topic right now. And in our micro webinar format, we're going to do this in 20 minutes. And the format for this is designed to be sort of a grab and go, get some useful and usable information, and then carry on with your day. And again, with security at the forefront right now, we feel like this is a great opportunity to share this additional information. So let's get started. I think it's a good opportunity for us to share a bit about Mosaic NetworX. I always like to know more about a company if I'm doing business with them, and with trusted partners, I think it's the same. So we'll take 1 minute here to kind of do that in the form of a historical chronology about the company. We were founded in 2007 by 3 industry veterans. Again, I was one of those 3. And we started as a carrier, a network aggregator, as we're known today. And we have about 300, well, several hundred wholesale buying agreements with carriers all over the world. So we have a global capability there. In 2014, with the promise of SD-WAN hitting the marketplace, we were early adopters of that technology and selected VeloCloud in 2015 to handle that part of our business, and did our first deployment in 2016, and have done countless deployments throughout North America and globally since then. And then more currently, we kind of finished the triad of services by acquiring a security practice, a robust operation out of the Bay Area, Brew Labs, and with that, we launched our security and professional services practice. So that gives you a good insight into the 14-year history of Mosaic NetworX. And I'd like to turn this over to Justin to talk about the stake in security. And Justin, go right ahead.
Thanks, Matt. So what our focus is today is talking about managed detection and response and managed risk and so forth. But I want to take a moment to talk about where companies are at today and talk about the approach to getting there. So the graphic you're seeing in front of you is kind of outlines where a lot of companies fall on this roadmap today. A lot of companies are at the basic or perimeter level, where they're doing a lot of work around password management and endpoint management and so on. They've got firewalls and things like that in place, but they really want to be at the upper end of this scale. They just don't necessarily know how to get there. So putting in things like IPS, IDS, and analyzing for risk and breaches and so forth as they're occurring and so forth, as well as prior to that. And then move up the scale to kind of that secure by design phase, where they're ahead of security as much as possible, and they're building it into their processes and systems on a day-to-day basis. We can move ahead. Great. to get there, as I'm sure you're all aware, the companies need to deploy a defense in depth strategy. So putting those successive measures in place. So if one fails, there's another one right behind it that allows it to take over and mitigate the risk as much as possible before a breach occurs and whatnot. So that approach also lends itself to things like managed detection and response, because each one of these successive measures generates log data that can be analyzed for attacks and risks and so forth. So we've taken this defense in-depth approach with our clients, and we've factored into our own life cycle and methodology that we take when we're approaching projects and customers that have come our way. That life cycle and methodology, as you see on the screen here, is really 4 phases. And this is derived from a number of things, such as that defense in depth strategy, plus other frameworks from NIST and others. But we've simplified it down to 4 basic steps. Kind of discovering where people are at today, deploying tools and services to help them get ahead of security or mitigate risks that exist today. And then monitoring and alerting, which allows them to discover those risks, and then mitigate and remediate to solve any problems that are there that they have not previously addressed. For today's talk, we're going to talk about the monitor and alert. So leveraging the SIEM solution to ingest, correlate, and validate that log data. We're going to go a little bit beyond that. We're going to talk about a managed SOC solution that takes that SIEM information and analyzes it to provide actionable intelligence back to the customer so that they can fix their issues and so forth as they occur and so on. So the managed SOC offering that we have breaks down into two different services. There's managed detection and response, which is really focused on identifying those attacks as they're occurring, as well as after they have occurred. As you know, there's no security tool out there that's ever going to be foolproof. If there's a will, there's a way. An attacker is going to find a way to breach. So you really have to have that defense in depth approach to mitigate that and limit the attack surface, as well as the damage that they can cause. That said, as some of those defenses have been breached, they'll generate that information that can later be identified or correlated with other indicators of compromise, along with correlated with attacks that may be in progress, so that you can do that forensic analysis after an attack has occurred, and analyze that information and be able to go back and figure out where they've been and close the doors that they came through and fix the damage that they have caused. In addition to that, we have a managed risk offering that actually is focused on closing the doors before the attackers walk through them. So this is looking at continuous vulnerability scanning of the attack surface, analyzing data that's available on the internet. So breached information is often published by attackers and so forth, so leaked credentials and just other information that may be out of the dark web and whatnot. So this is actually creating a risk profile, looking at that information that may be out there, as well as looking at vulnerability scans that are ongoing against the attack surface. This is all kind of based on, actually, Matt, can we go back one slide real quick? So this is based heavily on one of those NIST frameworks that I talked about earlier. So again, you look at the protect, detect, respond, recover, and identify. A little more complex than the framework that we like to engage our clients with, where they can jump in and do a process, but it's a very robust framework that these solutions fall under. So for those of you that aren't familiar with NIST, this is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. So it's a government organization that puts out frameworks like this and standards for public use, if you will. They're generally considered one of the gold standards out there for these types of frameworks. So looking at our SOC as a service, there's a lot on the slide, so we're going to walk through it at a high level. But really, the way the SOC as a service works for those two, for the MDR service and the managed risk, they leverage agents and sensors. Those agents can be installed on servers. They can be installed on client laptops, with desktops, and so forth, as well as network-based sensors that ingest log information, syslog information, and so forth from the servers that are on-prem or in a hosted public cloud such as AWS or something like that. They're ingesting that information along with direct API integrations for some applications such as Office 365, Okta, Salesforce, and so on, where it can ingest security event information. Those events and that information is analyzed using machine learning and AI to distill down that fire hose of information. Anything that comes out of that on the other end that's flagged as an incident or an issue is analyzed by two teams of humans that are dedicated to the customer. They're looking for false positives and things like that to weed those out. And then their goal is to provide actionable intelligence back to the customer. Something that they can take, follow the instructions from the security team and remediate the issue. They're really looking at those indicators of compromise to distill that information down. So you take that fire hose and you get a garden hose out of it. We can move on.
Great, Justin. Thanks for that. That's really the stake part of security and managed detection and response. I like to talk about the sizzle. I love Justin, and I couldn't do my job without him, but I really like the sizzle. And one of the things that I really want to share today is, why is this so important right now? I mean, security has always been important, but it's really reached a crescendo, not just with COVID, but because there's really a global pandemic with respect to skills. There is a global shortage in certified and qualified people to do cybersecurity. And when you look at this pie chart and you look at the map, there's a total shortage of about 4 million jobs that are unfilled. So that's a big deal. Just in North America, we're looking at a shortfall of 500,000 personnel to fill jobs in companies to do this work. So this is a great opportunity for the trusted partner to come into their client base who are fighting with these issues to fulfill security personnel roles. And when we look at it, I mean, these are the reasons why. I mean, the first thought would be just hire somebody to do the work. But we can't, again, because there's a severe workforce gap that is global. The second is there's a salary requirements. Because of this supply and demand imbalance, the salary requirements for these personnel are very high, and it's just hard to justify bringing that person in a single function capacity. We talk about single function. There's 12, as many as 12 different types of security positions identified out there. So then for the company, they have to decide, well, which one do they want to fulfill? So that creates additional complexity from a hiring perspective. The reality is that there's literally 0% unemployment for cybersecurity, and it's the same as it's been for the last 8 years. So again, this skills gap, and specifically in North America, is going to create a big problem for clients who attempt to bring this in-house, but most don't want to do it. Most want to go out to a trusted advisor who can recommend an MSSP, who can do this on an outsourced basis. But really what happens here is when there's a shortage, it creates opportunity, and not just for us. It creates opportunity for more cybercrime, which again just underscores the need for this in companies today. A couple of terms that I want to put out there, MTTI and MTTC for all the telco people on the call. We all know MTTR. Here's a couple of new ones to add to your vocabulary. Mean time to identify and mean time to contain. These are at least as important, if not more important, than the one that we're familiar with, mean time to repair. This really is dictates how long a security breach exists and then once it's determined, how long does it take to correct it? And so there's some numbers that are circulating around, and we posted them here. You know, the average is 314 days to find and resolve, so to identify and contain. And then anything after 200 days, you know, the costs start to go up exponentially. And we see that time and time again. But the upshot of all this is that, you know, most organizations are just unable to process their security event data. Again, why? Well, think skills shortage. There's just not enough personnel available and hireable in these companies to do the work. So again, there's a great opportunity for the trusted advisor to go to their client base and say, hey, we have a solution. I know that Target and Equinix, or Equifax rather, and Starwood are all sort of overused examples of big breaches that were in the headlines. And so, you know, Target was 7 years ago. So, you know, give me something that's, you know, more current, right? Give me some current goods. So this is what it looks like today. And I really didn't understand the scale of this today, but Javier Becerra, he's a big guy in California. As you can see, he's the Attorney General, and this is what he has to say. The law requires that businesses inform those about breaches. Well, how do they inform them? Well, there's a website, and it's available. And just to see how prevalent this kind of stuff is, I pulled this off the website yesterday. And what you can see here, and some of them are household names. If you're in Southern California, then you can see the city of Fullerton here. But we've got some big financial names. We've got healthcare. We all know GoDaddy. But just to underscore that MTTI and MTTC, here we've got some dates. And we can see that these hackers were in the principal life insurance companies shorts several times, in and out, and then starting in December, and then when they finally reported it to the state of California, and they wouldn't do this until they got it resolved, and no later, because they want to minimize that time, they didn't report it until last week. So we can see that there was 5 months that it took them from the time they were penetrated till the time it was resolved. And this isn't just one. I mean, there were several, you know, how many here in the last 30 days? Again, this is a prevalent problem. It's an increasing problem. And here's some real life numbers for you. So as a wrap up, and I think we're right on schedule, which I like. You know, Mosaic NetworX is delivering this as an MSSP. We've got a very innovative security portfolio. We have a stack of services that, as Justin mentioned, we use to create a defense in-depth approach. Managed detection and response is one of them, managed risk, cloud security stack. All of these sort of create this concentric circles that you see here on the right side. And we do that with best of breed security technologies. Again, we're an MSSP. We're not the company creating these technologies. They're multi-billion-dollar companies that do that. But we have the luxury of picking the best ones and bringing those to your clients. And we do that in a single vendor solution, which is great for the customers because they're looking for more simplicity. And we do it with our renowned bulletproof customer experience. And so with that, I'd like to turn it back to Seema to wrap up the X Factor webinar. I think you might be on mute, Seema.
Yes, I am. Thank you. We do have a couple questions that came in that I'll have Justin talk about. So the first question we have coming in, how do you gather the log data from on-premise servers and equipment?
Sure. Yeah, so as we touched on a little bit on the previous diagram, so There's sensors that get deployed locally on networks that can either be a virtual or physical appliance. What they do is you point your syslogs at it or other data. It'll ingest that and form a encrypted tunnel back to the SIEM solution and pipe that information over to it. So that handles all your on-prem servers, firewalls, network equipment, and so forth. Similarly, a virtual appliance can be deployed, can also be deployed within public clouds such as AWS and Azure to gather the same type of information from those as well. So it's not bound to just on-premise deployments.
Great, thank you, Justin, for that. The second question coming in is the SIEM tool set it and forget it, or does it need constant tuning?
All SIEM tools need to be tuned over time as the threat landscape changes and the attack surface changes and so forth. There's always going to be some work that has to be done to maintain that. A lot of companies will deploy a SIEM solution, think they've checked the box because they deployed this, but they end up with fire hose in, fire hose out because they're getting overwhelmed with false positives and things like that. So what our team does is that human element that I mentioned, those folks that are actually reviewing the information after it passes through the machine, if you will, to weed out those false positives. They're also taking that information back on a regular basis, working with the customer and trying to determine if they need to tune the SIEM to weed out those types of alerts possibly in the future. And that's an ongoing process. It manifests itself in executive summaries and reports and so forth that are delivered to the customer on an ongoing basis. And then they go back and actually make the changes after conferring with the customer.
Okay, great. Thanks, Justin. The next question, SIEM tools often produce a lot of false positives. How do you make the data more actionable?
Sure, that's kind of a follow-on to what we were just talking about. So again, they're reviewing that information. The most important thing to come out of a SIEM tool is those urgent alerts and things that are attacks in progress and so forth. So that's where the dedicated security team that the named engineers that are assigned to each customer, they're going to wake people up in the night for urgent issues and so forth if they have to. They'll either email, or actually make phone calls if there is that type of thing going on. But their other half of their job is to make sure that the SIEM tool isn't producing that fire hose, and they're weeding out the false positives and whatnot through that tuning process by examining and really getting to know the customer's network. They're there to help make sure that the customer is effectively able to remediate the issues that have been identified, but also understand their network so that they can prevent false positives from coming through.
Okay, great. Thanks, Justin. I have another question coming in. You are offering 2 SOC solutions. Do they have to be used together, or can they be used independently? Sure.
So the managed detection and response, the MDR, is one solution, and the managed risk is another solution. They can be used independently. So you can deploy the managed detection and response without the managed risk. So if you're really focused on breach awareness and so forth, those during and after alerting based on the data that's presented, you can deploy the MDR solution separately from the managed risk. Likewise, if you really just want the vulnerability scanning, the proactive alerting and so forth, so that you make sure you're patched and fully covered as much as possible from there, you can deploy the managed risk solution separately. That said, if you do choose to deploy them concurrently at both solutions, you don't have to deploy double the sensors or double the agents or anything like that. They can leverage the same agents deployed on computers as the same sensors that are deployed on networks and so forth. So it's a real easy uplift to go from one solution to the next if need be, if they're not both deployed at the same time.
Got it. Great. Thanks, Justin. I think those are all of our questions for today. I just wanted to let everybody know about the next X Factor webinar that we're going to be doing. We're going to be doing it next week, These are intended to be, very high impact, short 20-minute sessions. Next week, we're going to be talking about global network aggregation and custom network deployments. And these are some of the things that we'll be talking about. If you're having trouble, working with a responsive aggregator that knows the space, come to us, come and listen, and we'll be sharing some different tactics that we have. Also, if you're looking for capabilities beyond North America and into the global space, and then if you're looking for a company that does more than just POTS and broadband aggregation. So that's going to be next week at 10:30, same time next Thursday. Again, it's going to be a quick session. Come with questions that we can answer for you to help you out in your business.
Look forward to seeing everyone.
And with that, great. Well, with that, I think we're going to go ahead and close out the webinar. Thank you, everybody, for attending, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week.